8 years ago, I, a 54-year-old man, went through a divorce with my then 48-year-old wife. Following the separation, my 28-year-old daughter chose to sever all ties with me, aligning herself with her mother without seeking my perspective. Despite the passage of nearly a decade, accepting the outcome of my divorce and finding peace in my life has been a challenging journey. My ex-wife's attempts to tarnish my reputation played a role, but the primary struggle stemmed from the deep affection I held for my daughter. As an adult at the time of the divorce, her decision to exclude me from her life left me powerless. Without any other family besides my mother, who suffered from Alzheimer's, this ordeal marked one of the most distressing periods of my life. Despite numerous attempts to reach out to my daughter after the divorce, she remained steadfast in siding with her mother, unwilling to hear my side of the story. At one point, my ex-wife even took legal action against me, accusing me of harassment if I persisted in trying to connect with my daughter. Faced with such explicit warnings, I reluctantly ceased my attempts to reach out. For the past 8 years, I dedicated myself to caring for my ailing mother and focusing on my career. Although I engaged in a few casual relationships, the scars from my divorce left me with a profound difficulty in trusting others. This has been the narrative of my life for almost a decade, and I apologize if my tone seems somber. The reason I am sharing this story now is that recently, my daughter reached out to me, overjoyed by the prospect of reconnecting. I initially believed she had reconsidered her stance on the divorce. This development was particularly comforting as my mother had recently passed away, and I found myself grappling with grief and a desire for familial support. A few months after my mother's passing, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. On the other end was a woman's voice, introducing herself as my daughter. Surprised and unable to recognize her voice after such a long estrangement, I learned that she had seen on Facebook that her grandmother had passed away and wanted to check on me. Grateful for her concern, we engaged in conversation, and she suggested meeting in person. Excited about the possibility of rebuilding our relationship, we arranged to meet at my house over the weekend. Eager to reconnect, I cooked dinner for her. The moment arrived, and as I opened the door, I was both nervous and excited. It had been nearly a decade since our last encounter, and she was just a little girl back then. Despite the initial awkwardness, we gradually opened up to each other. She shared details about her life and work, and I reciprocated with information about my experiences. After dinner, we finally broached the unspoken topic in the room. I asked her why she had never considered my perspective during the divorce and had defaulted to choosing her mom. I acknowledged that her mother had been a more present figure as a stay-at-home mom, contrasting with my demanding construction job. My daughter expressed regret, acknowledging that she was too young to fully understand the situation and had been manipulated by her mother's portrayal of me as the ultimate villain. Since she never heard my side of the story, she never questioned her decision. We continued our conversation, delving into various topics, until she eventually disclosed the true reason for her sudden reconnection. Hours into our discussion, I couldn't help but inquire about the catalyst that prompted her to reach out after such an extended period. Her demeanor shifted, and sensing her discomfort, I reassured her that honesty was welcomed. She hesitated before revealing that she had been monitoring my activities on Facebook. Learning about her grandmother's passing, she anticipated legal representatives would approach her regarding the inheritance. When that didn't happen, she decided to contact me directly. While expressing condolences for my loss, she disclosed her recent engagement and conveyed a need for financial assistance with wedding expenses. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Hopes of rekindling a family bond were shattered as it became apparent that her motives were rooted in financial gain. Ironically, the inheritance legally belonged to me, and her attempt to leverage our connection for personal benefit was disheartening. Money was never a priority for me. I lived modestly, with no extravagant hobbies, and bought my clothes from Target. Even if the inheritance were rightfully hers, I would have gladly contributed to her wedding expenses had she approached me sincerely. Amidst the whirlwind of emotions, I maintained composure and questioned if financial support was her sole objective. Her defensive response emphasized that the inheritance was secondary and her primary goal was to reconnect. She expressed regret for not reaching out earlier, attributing her silence to fear of my unforgiving reaction to being abruptly cut off without an explanation. Skepticism lingered as I wondered if her motives were genuine or driven solely by financial gain. Curious about her claim to the inheritance, I inquired further. She recounted a conversation with my late mother a couple of years before the divorce, where she allegedly expressed a desire for my daughter to inherit everything from my father, who had passed away years ago. Understanding the dynamics of my family at that time, I acknowledged the possibility that my mother might have made such a statement. However, the crushing realization that her apparent interest in reconnection was centered on financial gain left me devastated. Choosing to test her intentions, I asked about the amount she expected from the inheritance. Her accurate estimate hinted at meticulous planning. Seizing the moment, I disclosed that her grandmother had left everything to me years ago, intending to use the money to start a business. Her reaction to this revelation would be the litmus test for the authenticity of her intentions. Regrettably, I couldn't fulfill her request for financial assistance, but I offered to contribute a substantial amount from my own funds toward her wedding expenses. The disappointment etched on her face confirmed my apprehensions. While expressing gratitude, she insisted that, as the sole grandchild, she deserved a portion of the inheritance, asserting that it was rightfully her grandmother's money. I conveyed my sincere desire to help, explaining that my decision was final. Her reaction was visceral. Her face turned red, and anger simmered visibly. She implored me to reconsider, but I stood firm, emphasizing the importance of doing what felt right to me. It was then that she unveiled her true feelings, delivering a hurtful remark affirming her belief that I was the selfish person her mother claimed I was. Her declaration stung, though I had anticipated such sentiments. Cutting her off before she could continue, I expressed disappointment in her manipulative approach and called out her attempt to exploit my grief for her own gain. I laughed off her accusation, pointing out the irony that had she not blocked me years ago, she would have received my messages about her grandmother's situation. Encouraged by her confusion, I asked her to unblock me, allowing me to resend the texts. As she read through the messages, which included pleas for understanding and notifications about her grandmother's Alzheimer's diagnosis, a genuine sense of shame crossed her face. She apologized, acknowledging her lack of awareness during the divorce and expressing a desire to rebuild our relationship. Despite her remorse, she argued that her grandmother would want her to inherit, and it was unfair for me to withhold it. I countered, asserting that if our relationship hinged on monetary considerations, perhaps it was best not to have one at all. Although she professed a genuine desire for reconciliation, I couldn't bring myself to believe it at that moment. I informed her that while I would entertain the idea of rebuilding our relationship, the inheritance was off the table. In response, she looked at me with pure resentment and left my house without any attempt on my part to intervene. In the aftermath, I sought the perspectives of my friends. Most agreed that I made the right decision, but a close friend expressed a different viewpoint, suggesting that since money held little significance to me, I should have prioritized mending the relationship. I've been wrestling with the idea of letting my daughter have a portion of my inheritance just to have some semblance of family in my life. It's not a decision I'm comfortable with, but ever since someone suggested it, the thought has been lingering in my mind. Should I consider giving my daughter a share of my inheritance? Update 1. Hi everyone, the response to this post has been more overwhelming than I anticipated. Thank you all for your advice and insights. It's given me the perspective I needed. To address the most common question about what happened during the divorce, I haven't talked about it for years, but I suppose it's time. My wife and I were married for 23 years. You'd think that after such a long time, there wouldn't be betrayal, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Without delving into the painful details, I discovered she was cheating on me with multiple men for years. The revelation devastated me, leading to heavy drinking and a period of destructive behavior. Our confrontations during the separation were tumultuous, and her influence, especially as a local celebrity due to her journalism career, played a significant role in alienating my daughter. After nearly a year of living in this chaotic state, we faced each other and got divorced. My ex-wife's attempts to tarnish my reputation were almost successful, and it took considerable time for me to overcome the drinking and rebuild my life. As I've mentioned, my daughter's complete abandonment compounded the difficulty. Admittedly, I was not a present parent during this tumultuous period. The revelation of my ex-wife's affairs threw me off balance, and I distanced myself from my daughter. Despite attempts at reconciliation after getting my life back on track, she refused to listen, blocking me everywhere. Regarding my mother's inheritance, technically belonging to my father, it stemmed from my grandparents' property investments. When my father passed away at 21, everything went to my mother, and she retained ownership during my marriage and for some years post-divorce. My daughter was aware of her grandmother's property holdings, but I never touched that money, as income from my construction business sufficed for a comfortable life. As for my daughter, she hasn't reached out since that night, and honestly, I don't expect her to. It seems apparent that her involvement was centered around the inheritance, and now that it's off the table, our relationship might not continue. While I'm not entirely unaffected, I've learned not to expect too much from people, regardless of their connections. Thank you all for your support. I feel it's time for me to move forward and explore new possibilities, including re-entering the dating scene to find companionship instead of lingering on the ghosts from my past. Update 2. This week has been quite eventful. Coming back from work, contemplating an outing with friends, the doorbell unexpectedly rang, revealing my ex-wife. A sight that shook me to the core. She had undergone changes in appearance, making recognition take a moment. Despite the awkwardness, I invited her in when she expressed the need to talk. Small talk ensued, leading to her revelation that our daughter had informed her about the inheritance. This expectation didn't surprise me. She acknowledged the difficulty of the divorce on me and urged me not to punish our daughter. Paralleling my daughter's sentiments, she emphasized her youth during the divorce and the inevitability of her siding with her mother. Halting her, I clarified that any lingering hurt wasn't directed at our daughter, but rather at the realization that her sudden reconnection was motivated by the prospect of financial gain. Rebuffing any attempts at defense, I asserted my final decision and requested her departure. In the aftermath, I sat in disbelief, never expecting such an encounter. I later went out with friends to distract myself. Update 3. This afternoon, I received a call from my daughter, initially reluctant to pick up. However, curiosity prevailed. She expressed apologies, acknowledging she should have handled things differently. Surprisingly, she invited me to her wedding, emphasizing a desire for a renewed relationship. Conflicted, I'm unsure if this is genuine or an attempt to secure the inheritance. Seeking advice on how to navigate this situation. Update 4. After considering the advice from many, I've decided to attend the wedding as a guest, not part of the wedding party. Recognizing the significant leap from estrangement to walking her down the aisle, I hope this marks the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. Grateful for the support and well wishes from all of you. Stay tuned for more updates.